to the empire. At the end of the day, the Cuban Revolution gives hope to where there was no hope. Fidel said in the first Congress of the Communist Party of Cuba that Cuba was the last colonial holding of Spain in Latin America, and today
Yes,
has become
yes, it
the
was.
first socialist state in the Americas. So it was quite a change that occurred in less than a century from the time of Jose Marti to the time of Fidel. As they say in Cuba, Marti promised it, and Fidel fulfilled it. And the dream of these patriots is still being fulfilled every day by the Cuban people, by the patriots, by the communists that every day get up to work. Get up to work not for pay because they're not getting paid that much, but get up to make a nation, to make a revolution. I think that's tremendously inspiring.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on, dude. Like that's some great work that the Troca Collective, right, is doing, and other coalition organizations
Right,
that's along
right.
with you guys. That's
Exactly.
awesome, man. Real quick
Yeah.
before, because we about to talk about some stuff in the next 30 minutes, man.
Yes.
Um, my name is Jamar Jabari, and you're on here with Comrade Diggy Ortez.
Mhm.
This is the Unsavory Politik, and thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thank you so
It
much
is
for
the
inviting
king.
me. It's always good to come in and discuss the politics here in Miami, in Peru, throughout the world, really, because we're all interconnected. So thank you again for your invitation.
Hell yeah. So
Awesome. I'm sorry. Let me get my drink just so I don't cough too much while I'm talking.
yeah, no problem. I'll give a good introduction while you get your drink, my guy. Before we go into it, we're going to talk about a lot of variety of topics. We got some stuff to cover since you know unsavory politics last episode has been on, um, and everybody that's been watching everything that's been going on with the Jabari Vlog podcast. Thank you so much for following those good interviews. What's very very important is right now we are seeing a panic of democracy in the U.S. 24/7 with the Cornel West campaign. I myself have been attacked. Let's see, we got Diddy back.
What? You've been attacked?
Not attacked like
Okay. Not
not a,
physically, right? But like
yeah,
online.
online. My
Yes.
Twitter account, my Twitter and my TikTok account. The TikTok got about like 500 views, but the Twitter
Mhm.
video I did on Cornel West got over 16,000 views, and it was a lot of opinions, and
Mm.
majority of the census was this fear mongering that I saw, where basically people were saying, "Oh, so that means that you represent the Republicans."
Great.
How in hell?
Yeah, I am a Republican. I'm sorry. No, but for real, I have no conception of Democrats being better than Republicans. So if you call me a
Right.
Republican, yo, the party of Lincoln, the party of the radical Republicans, of black Republicans. So you know what? Call me a Republican. I don't give a fuck. I'm just being real. I have no time to play these games where Joe
Right.
Biden is better or what. Like
No.
anyway, I cut you off. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep on going because
I could
this
rant
is
all
you
day.
saying how I feel.
You know, I could rant all day. I was in the third party movement myself, involved with the Green Party myself a few years
Mm-hmm.
back, and I got to see the ups and downs of the Green Party. The
Mm-hmm.
Green Party has a lot of work on its plate, right, on its docket, and a lot of work here means trying to stay on the ballot. It
Right.
is very difficult to get on the ballot in any state of this country if you're not a monopoly capitalist party. And
Yep.
it is nigh impossible to get on the ballot in some places. I mean, in different states, they've changed the rules in the middle of elections. They've changed the
Right.
rules in the middle of electoral cycles. Uh, they've even counted off signatures that they suspect they were fraudulent without looking at them one by one. I mean, it's just it's a mess, right? That's
Yeah.
on one side, and then on the opposite side, of course, is that the Green Party exists as the negation of two things: the negation, of course, of the corporate duopoly, of the party of war, the party of Wall Street, the party of Big Pharma,
Yep.
and so on. But on the other end, it exists in negation of socialism, of Marxism, Leninism,
Mm-hmm.
of all the revolutionary movements of the 20th century, and that's really where its weakness lies, right? In
Right.
that a lot of its membership and leadership, you know, there's all sorts of boomers, there's all sorts of millennials and Gen Z people, right? But these boomers are definitely the hippies of the 60s that did not join SDS, that did
Yep.
not join the local communist group,
Yep.
but also that did not want to just become the left wing of the Democratic Party, or some did for a bit, right?
Right.
So they exist in this space where anti-communism is a given in the Green Party, but at the same token, there's no other alternative. And
Right.
so they're constantly having to juggle with this reality and trying to push it off, right? And then you see a brain drain, if you will, uh, from from the party, right? If you're a young person, or even middle-aged older person, but you are becoming more radicalized and you're studying the
Right.
works of scientific socialism, the Green Party doesn't, at this moment, in this model that they have, or circumstance that they're in, does not allow for a Marxist-Leninist movement to grow and take over the party, etc. And of course, without getting into factionalism, even though I haven't been in the Green Party for years, I still
Mm-hmm.
was never the type to break into factions, even though there were factions at every level, right? It was factions at the
Oh yeah.
county level, like
Oh
at the
yeah.
like these are
So many factions.
dangerous. But
That so
go
many
ahead. Yeah,
factions.
sorry.
No, 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 no. I agree with you. So many factions. I have worked with the Green Party in Connecticut,
Hmm.
and from my understanding, they are the most left Green Party faction I have seen across the United States.
Okay.
Shouts out to Matthew Ho. He's very left. But like you said, with North Carolina, the Green Party of North Carolina that ran Matthew Ho, he's no longer a part of them anymore. But I felt like it was a pretty good idea to have him run for Senate. Um, Even though
Yeah.
I don't know if Matthew Ho considers himself a full on socialist. I remember that when I spoke to him, he said that he do accept socialist ideas. But you're absolutely right with the Green Party.
Yeah.
And my thing with the left, to be left, you have to be anti-capitalist. You cannot be an effective leftist trying to support capitalism. It just doesn't work. It's just this is why we have the issues that we have right now, because we're too busy trying to be compatible. I'm not talking about us, me and you. I'm talking about the Democrats that are very, very left, that and then the Green Party and any other faction of progressives. They're too busy trying to be compatible with capitalism, and they don't understand that it is capitalism itself is the reason why that things don't change. So you have to oppose capitalism and be steadfast in your knowledge of why you oppose capitalism, the contradictions of capitalism, and so you can be more effective as a leftist. That might be an opinion that a lot of people won't like, but
Hmm.
seeing it more and more, it's like, whatever answers do you have now? The bourgeoisie has won. They have captured the democracy here, and like you said, how they're changing the rules as they go. And this is Democrat and Republicans. They are allowed to change the rules of voting as they go. It's that's not true democracy at all.
No, no, it's okay. I don't want to take a historical nihilist position of saying, well, it was never supposed to be a democracy, right? Because
Yeah, right.
in many ways, the founding fathers, inspired by the Enlightenment and later on the French Revolution and so on, they were in their minds conceiving a better society, and a
Mm-hmm.
society that was more representative, that did not depend on artificial or superficial titles of nobility and
Mm-hmm.
prestige and so on. Of course, these carried, racist, genocidal, all
Yeah.
forms of oppressive institutions underneath it, right?
Right.
But, and here's the caveat I'll give to the whole thing, is that a society that was very oppressive was also ancient Greece, a society in which most people were slaves.
Right.
And you weren't enslaved because of your race, you were just enslaved because you're not part of the aristocracy of Greece. The end.
Right.
That was terrible, right? And we can say, like, yo, like, slavery is always wrong, it's always immoral, never again, and amen, right? But,
Right.
you know, you do, at least historically, you need a group of people that have in their time, in their ability, the ability to sit there and think and write and draw and sculpt and calculate, right, in order to advance the sciences, the arts, culture in general, technique in general, history in general. And so that's not to say, well, that all the everything in that society was good, but it had a good side to it. Now, advancing, the discourse to today, the analysis to today, right? You have on the left people who are anti-capitalists or are socialists, right? Communists,
Hmm.
because it makes sense to them.
Right.
That is to say, they've read the history, they've read the work, and they're like, well, this makes the most sense to me.
Right.
Okay, cool. They're in the Greek, aristocratic mindset. Oh, this makes sense to me. This is all follows logically. But we need more than that. We
Right.
need people who are not anti-capitalist because or merely because they came to the right conclusions, they've read the right books, etc., but rather because it's instinctive in their struggle for survival. It's
There
instinctive
it is.
that your manager is
Yeah.
a piece of shit because they've always been a piece of shit, right? It'd be
Right.
one thing if all your managers were very good people to you, and then one guy was bad, you're like, man, that guy, he's an asshole, whatever, right? But if all of them have a inherent interest in contradiction to yours, right? That is a material reality that is reproduced every single day, more consistently than anything that humans do. You could be
Right.
a very devout Muslim, and you wake up at 5 in the morning or before then to pray to Allah, right? And you fast every day, and you sing to Allah. You're the
Hmm.
most zealous Muslim. You've done the pilgrimage, everything. Guess what? Capitalism is more consistent and faithful than you are, because capitalism doesn't pray 5 times a day. It exchanges commodities 5 times per millisecond.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So it cannot depend on just your sheer will or your sheer zealotry to make something happen, but material conditions. Now, I say this only coming at it from the angle of we need a proletarianization of the movement.
Yes, we
Because
do.
I also don't want to demean the role of ideology, of morality, the
Yeah.
role of consciousness, of culture. All those things are wonderful, and they are world changing things,
Yeah.
but they work on the basis of economics.
And my issue is that with people that think that there isn't a nuance, and it's easier for you to be able to work and organize with someone who is a working class man that it doesn't even have any type of political ideology, but what they see in front of them is the exploitation of their labor and what they're getting out of the deal. The deal is that they're still on food stamps and they're still struggling with their child with their children. So they're able to get out into these streets. My issue is with the leaders that like the Margie, Brianna, Great Joy.
He's
Like
a
they just,
leader. Oh no.
you know, I don't want. I'm trying to be nice, but it's like they automatically want to shoot down opportunities of true left movements.
Mhm.
Like, they got good points and then they don't. Cornel West is at 5% on the polling. That's a big deal. That shows that the Green Party is getting shit done with him.
Yeah.
We should be pushing that more instead of saying, "Oh, but he's not voting blue." Get out of here. They got it captured. The mindset is captured. It's just it's such a weird time. Like, I mean, I'm only 31 years old, but historically, like, has it really been this black and white with America, or are we now in the stages where everything is black and white? What do you think?
What do you mean black and white? Like
As in,
contradiction?
there's no nuance at all. That people are adding automatically ready to continue to vote for a man that's been in
Yeah,
some form of office since my parents was born
yeah,
and has signed and for every single war crime. He even wrote the crime bill that put a lot of our people in prison that look like us. Like,
yeah.
he's just been such a corrupt asshole, and now all of a sudden he's the savior of democracy.
Well, how many people that were incarcerated by Joe Biden voted for Joe Biden? You know,
Yeah, that's a good
like
question. Yeah.
if you some people, in Florida, you really couldn't even vote once you got arrested for a felony. So your voice didn't even count. The
Right.
biggest voting block, if you will, are people that don't vote. There's
Right.
more independents in America than Democrats and Republicans and all that, right?
Right.
So, and it's true that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are two of the most unpopular presidents in American history. I think that that should also be noted.
Right.
So people are kind of committed. Some people are committed to the anti-vote, which is kind of like the I'm gonna vote for the lesser of two evils, and I
Right.
think the lesser of two evils is the Republican or the Democrat. But a shift has started to occur, even in this logic, which is
Mm-hmm.
a logic of desperation and frustration. And it is that now I'm going to vote against the system. That's why, in many ways, the base of the Republican Party is still going to vote for Donald Trump, even
Mm-hmm.
if the establishment, Wall Street, and their lackeys say, "Well, no, 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 we're going to give you Donald Trump, right? We're going to give you somebody who's like, yo, build a wall, yo, fuck China, Muslim ban, whatever you guys want, right?" But this guy is going to be well measured. He's not going to say that Kim Jong Un is going to be his best friend. He's not going to tweet at 3 in the morning. He's not going to be going through cabinet members like he's changing his socks. This guy, he is going to be professional, well spoken. Think of Obama, but like white and like, you know, just right wings, socially speaking, right? But here's the
Mm-hmm.
problem: the people didn't vote for that. And that has been one of the greatest misinterpretations I think that the left and the right have done, right? The idea
Mm-hmm.
that Donald Trump voters voted for his social questions and positions is false.
Mm-hmm.
They voted for him. And I think this guy, man, I haven't seen him in a while. The guy who made Bowling for Columbine, he always wears a hat, a cap, baseball cap. What's his name? Michael. You look it up. But anyway, so this guy, he went ahead and he said it. He called the 2016 elections just a little bit before they happened. Michael Moore, and he said people are gonna look at their vote as I think he said either like a grenade or a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
They're gonna throw it
Right.
at the establishment, right? So
Look.
why is RFK surging in the polls right now in the Democratic side? Because
Mm-hmm.
he's also that Trump-esque fake populist.
And they're trying so hard to even end his campaign, even on the ideas of his opinions on vaccinations, which he's not even running on his opinions on vaccinations.
Yeah.
Um, it's just it's really interesting, and I know that political banter and beefs and stuff is just American culture. Has been like this for years. Hell, 1800s people died. This is how Alexander Hamilton got
Mhm.
murdered. So, um, it's just really like annoying to me. But we should move
Oh,
on to the next topic.
oh, okay. Well, can I make? I do want to make
Yeah.
one last point about RFK because I think
Yep.
it's
Yep.
important that people should know. Okay, so RFK, he claims that some vaccines are linked to causing autism, right?
Right.
Okay, that's very serious. Right? You telling me if I give my kid a vaccine, they may get autism? That's pretty serious,
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty
I
serious.
may
Yeah.
skip. I may skip the vaccine because I don't want to get autism. I don't want my family to get autism, etc. Right? Okay, cool. So you ask RFK, well, damn, RFK, yo, we're gonna do something about that, right? Like you fucking ban some of this shit, or subject it to rigorous research, and we're gonna make
Yeah.
sure that the vaccines. No, RFK does not stand for regulating the vaccines that he claims cause autism. What? Wait, hold on a second.
Ah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on, because you told me this shit can give me autism. Why is it in the market, right? Like,
Right, right.
and he says, well, no, it's because I am principally a free market guy, no regulation guy. So that means that this guy can be like, bro, this shit's gonna give you autism, but
Yeah,
we're not gonna ban it. We're not gonna
not gonna
control
ban
it. It is what it is. So that's why I don't buy RFK. But I'll leave it at that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. You know, I definitely heard him say that shit. So I was like, ugh, God, man, whatever. But now, uh, Latin America, for people that don't know, all these attempts to overthrow governments and stuff like that, it's funded by the U.S. government. It's funded by the CIA. It's funded by Pentagon. And there's been a lot going on that the news is not covering. For instance, what's happening with in Colombia, where there's been a lot of outrage from the oligarchs because they're not gone. All the big oil, the narcos, everybody, they're not gone. They're just pissed that
Yeah.
that they lost. And what are you hearing about? Are you heard any tensions on ground? I know Breakthrough News basically covered this and it freaked me out. Do you think that there's a coup rising in Colombia?
Probably, probably. But the deciding factor as to whether it'll triumph or not is the people.
Mm,
Period. It's the organizations. Is the, as they would say in Peru, the living organizations, not the dead, NCAA, NAACP type organizations. NCAA might be very alive. Um,
mm-hmm.
but I say that because in Peru we had a very shitty coup attempt, right? In
Right,
or coup in general.
right.
For example, in in Venezuela, for the opposition to have a snowball's chance in hell of winning elections, they have to unite, and it's tough for them. They kick, they scream, they're bitter, they're petty. These are people of no principle, but they know, fuck, if I don't unite, we're gonna be in the same boat. And they
Right.
unite, and then they disunite and insult each other and whatever. I remember one of the funniest things was when one of these Venezuelan right wing streamers, he told a politician, "Sir, now that the 40-day quarantine of COVID-19 has ceased in Venezuela, I ask you to enter another 40-day quarantine. We don't want to see you for another 40 days." And that's how they treat each other, the opposition. But in Peru, they didn't unite for various reasons. The principal reason is this: in the Peruvian constitution, because the Peruvian constitution up until like a year ago gives the president tremendous powers to rule as he wishes or as she wishes. Now I guess we have our first female dictator, so woke.
Dina,
That's right. We have
she
our
was
own
annoying.
Janine Añez. But because of that, to become president means that you and your party can rob the state. That is what you are
Mm,
supposed to do, right? You
mm,
go into the government, you rob, you leave government, and then you go to jail. And that has been every single president in Peru since 1985. Like the only guy who didn't go to jail after his presidency was Merino, who may still go to jail anyway because he was
mm-hmm,
president for like 5 days. Alan Garcia didn't go to jail right after his first term, but he went to jail after his second term. And
mm-hmm.
everybody else has been to jail. You have Sagasti,
Jailbirds.
who some people want to send him to jail. He might not make it. He was a transitional president, but everybody else has been to jail. If you were elected president in Peru, you went to jail.
Mm,
And that's because you robbed, you stole, you really
yep.
did steal. It's not even like false charges, it's not fake news, you really did steal. So, Pedro Castillo, he found himself in a situation right when he got inaugurated, before the first cabinet was inaugurated, where he could either pick two teams. He could pick the National Political Party Peru Libre, or he could pick the so-called caviares, right? The leftists that come from money. They live in Europe and North America,
Right.
and then they hope to give give a little bit of what they have to Peru, right? These are people that come from the oligarchy or want to become part of the oligarchy and so on. So the main argument of them is that look, Peru Libre is a party that stinks of cholo, they would say, right? Of indigenous, dirty peasant, people who are illiterate, who are in uneducated, who have very poor manners, right? Whereas we are, we speak many languages, we are very well educated, and we have the real technical prowess to go ahead and lead the state. You can't have some lady who milks cows like lead a ministry, like period. So in that context, Castillo decided I'm gonna listen to both a little bit, but my closest, like aides, my closest assistants, they're gonna come from my hometown of Chota in the Andes. These
Mm.
are the people that I've known since I was like a little kid, and these are the people that I'm gonna really trust.
Mm.
So I believe it was his brother-in-law, became his advisor. And within a couple of weeks, $20,000 were found taped into the inside part of the toilet, where the water is, of his office. Just $20,000 taped in the inside of the toilet bowl. Not the bowl itself, but where the water reservoir is, right? And so at that moment, Pedro Castillo could have been like, "You're
Good
fired,"
hiding spot.
or some shit like that.
Right. Right.
But all he did was bring in more people from that circle, the Chota circle, they were called, right? These are people who had very little political principles or interests or inclinations, right? The Caviares have a social democratic agenda of, legalizing pot and legalizing marriage equality and abortion. I agree with all those things, right? Amen and amen. I'm not opposed to any of those things,
Right.
but I also know that the vast majority of Peruvians signed up for an economic program. And if you can prove that economic program, you can sell people on a lot of other things. They don't have to be
Yeah.
woke to be like, yeah, okay, if you're a man and you want to marry a man, whatever, who cares? But you
Now, this is
first
a
have,
planned economy.
huh?
Is the economic program something like a planned economy?
So the economic program of Peru Libre is called the popular economy with markets. That means
Okay.
that Peru does take control of some major industries in preparation for sanctions. That is
Okay.
important to know that the Peru Libre plan, the first stage is okay, we're taking over, and then we're immediately preparing for massive sanctions. Like
Mm-hmm.
we know that the taking over means sanctions, so immediately take over the industries such as the agricultural businesses and the mines and the gas in order to be able to withstand sanctions. Peruvian gas, if it's able to be harnessed, has at least the potential to power Peru for 500 years. That
Jesus.
means that we wouldn't be like Cuba or Venezuela with consistent outages. You have to commit like literal terrorism, like literally bombing like a power plant to take out the power, which is not something that the United States wouldn't do, right? I mean, they'll pay
It
some.
makes sense why they're so interested in Peru and ready to invade and help out Dina.
Exactly. Very interesting because they have a lot of natural resources. Most Peruvians do work in agriculture. Most Peruvians do, because of feudalism and semi feudalism, they're generally acquainted as to how to grow their own food. So they're not
Mm.
like, unless you live in Lima and you've grown there for a few generations, okay, you buy your food at the market, right? But a lot of Peruvians will be able to sustain a blockade if they're well organized. But
Mm.
Pedro Castillo, he decided that he was going to first have a caviar minister of the economy, right? This guy named Pedro Franque. And Pedro
Okay.
Franque, Peru Libre objected to Pedro Franque, the leader of Peru Libre, Vladimir Cerrón. He said, yo, that guy is like the Chicago boys of Pinochet or some shit. Like, he went off on him, right? And so Pedro Franque, this guy, was very anti Peru Libre. Then the Attorney General, or rather the Minister of Justice, that later became the prime minister, he Aníbal Torres, he was also against Peru Libre. And bit by bit, Pedro Castillo aligned himself more with the Caviares and with the Chota circle. And when the coup came, the Caviares abandoned him and voted for his ouster. And the Chota circle ran. I mean, a bunch of these people are like in Bolivia or in the Peruvian Braem, which is where the police are not able to reach, and so on. So Pedro Castillo, due in part to his own fault, in part to the deficits of the movement, he was able to be couped. Today, Peru, the Peruvian popular movement counts with over like 80% of support, almost 90% of support, and yet they can't take down like a Mickey Mouse government, a shoestring government. They're not able to take that down, even though you have the overwhelming majority of people supporting you, and that is because there is a real unfortunate widespread anti-party sentiment, right? So there's a bunch of little organizations that they march. I'm sorry, you're muted.
As I was muted, I apologize.
Mhm.
Are the party itself, as in government, or the Peru Libre Party,
No, no, the
or
Peruvian society is against parties
okay?
in
Oh, so they
general.
just don't want parties at all in general. I mean, you
It,
have mentioned this that there's a lot of different leftist factions within Peru. Everyone's opposing the coup government, but everyone has their own ideas on what needs to be done, basically.
in essence, the idea of a party has been delegitimized by the Peruvian establishment, by the Peruvian Congress, or the Peruvian Constitution. So, for
Okay.
example, let's say you wanna run to be president. Let's say you're RFK or whatever, right? You have to found your own party. You have to
Wow.
have a new party. So a new party comes through. That's why even though Fujimorismo
Yeah.
is a
That's why I'm
widespread
confused.
corruption mafia, there's
Okay.
multiple Fujimorista parties, right? There's the main Fuerza Popular Fujimori party, but there's a bunch of other small Fujimorista parties. And so
Mm,
Peru Libre was founded on a Marxist Leninist principle of having a party of a new type. That
okay.
was not a party that was founded, to run a presidential candidate. Peru Libre was founded 14 years ago in Junin. It became a regional movement that later became a national party, and it
Okay.
started organically at that level. And so the reason why I mentioned that is because unlike Peru Libre, most parties in Peru are just founded by a rich guy that then sells positions in the congressional list. What does that mean?
Okay.
That means that once I run for president, there's also going to be congressional elections. So you get put on a
o-
list. The more money you make, the higher you get on the list, and that means that the
Got you.
higher the probability that you're going to end up in Congress. And so you have like local, like corrupt merchants become congressmen. They don't even know how to talk. They don't even know how to articulate their ideas. They're like they're like Sarah Palin and Marjorie Taylor Greene times
Okay.
20, but a guy, because it's always men because of patriarchy and chauvinism in Peru. So
So many
those
thoughts
guys,
on those.
yeah. So just like I think of of a Peruvian man that speaks like Sarah Palin and MTG and
Mhm.
AOC, honestly, right? Just throwing that out
Yeah.
there. Fire. Anyway,
Now we have about 7 minutes left.
oh,
Because I
okay,
have
okay.
to go
Yeah,
somewhere.
of course,
Um,
of course. Go ahead. But
but
the Peru
thank
Libre
you
thing,
so
as I was
much.
saying, just to finish up, Peru Libre
Yeah,
has
yeah.
to overcome that tendency in Peru to be very suspicious of parties and simply not want to be led by a party. Because guess what? If the people don't have an advanced political organization leading them, it's just protest, protest, protest. And the only weapon that you have at that point is the blood of peasants, and that shouldn't be the only weapon.
And what we're looking at is a stalemate, basically. And since there's no progress being done, the United States government has decided to quietly take matters into their own hands and help out Dina, or are they still? Is that an option that just hasn't been executed yet, or it's already happening?
Well, the United States supported Dina by not expressing their disagreement with the coup.
Okay.
And I think that and by expressing their opposition to Pedro Castillo on several occasions. The OAS, which Fidel called the Ministry of Colonies, never really went out against Dina Boluarte. Yes, they have, on technicalities, being like, bro, this is not legal. You can't hold the president in jail. By the technical interpretation of
Right.
many jurists, Pedro Castillo is the legal president of
Oh, okay. So
Peru
he's still
to this day.
basically okay.
To this day.
Okay.
And so even the most, optimist caviares will be like, bro, we can get the OAS to like order the liberation of Pedro Castillo and the reinstatement of Pedro Castillo. I don't
Okay, I
think they're
see.
gonna do that. I
Yeah, I
think
don't think the OA do that.
no, yeah, they're not gonna do that. Even though again, Pedro Castillo was acting completely within the bounds of the law and the constitution, and the coup government is a bandit government at the behest of imperialism and all forms
Right.
of banditry. They get to stay unless the people take them down. So, in my view, the Peruvian people are in a place where they have to make a decision.
Okay.
Are you going to follow a party, or are you going to
Yeah.
take the abuse?
Mm, mm, mm. That's a big deal. And what is your synopsis of Gustavo's situation
Mhm.
in Colombia? President Gustavo. Um, do you think that he has his days numbered, or if he plays his cards right, he won't be cooled? Because
I
the left is
Yeah,
winning, and there's a lot. Zamora Castro. Oh, we got 4 minutes. So I have to get you on it. Zamora Castro up in
yeah,
Honduras. She has a lot to deal with because the Honduras is led by gangs
correct.
that were propped up by her predecessor, who was a Hillary Clinton friend, and now Hillary don't want nothing to do with him because he's about to go to prison for selling cocaine and create a
Yeah,
narco state that she allowed. But Democrats, they just use you until they have no use for you. But so
yeah.
I'll just say, like, all right, like is Colombia, because Colombia was such a huge part for the right wing. Is Gustavo safe? Like, I'm very concerned about President Gustavo.
Yeah, I'm concerned too. I don't know. Like the thing is that I'm not definitely familiar with the movement in
Hmm.
Colombia, like I am with Peru, being a part of it, being an affiliate of Peru Libre, traveling to Peru,
Hmm.
having family there, and so on. Especially family that is very politically knowledgeable on the left. So I can't really speak to Petro as much. All I can say is that it's in the hands of the Colombian revolutionary masses now.
Mm.
The Colombian revolutionary masses, as far as I'm concerned, have been much smarter than the Peruvian left. I mean,
Okay.
even the FARC, which committed errors and so on, even
Right.
the FARC is much more powerful than any insurgent movement that Peru ever had, including Sendero Luminoso or the MRTA. So I want to underscore
Really?
that yes,
Okay.
the FARC was able to gain a lot of territory and a lot of legitimacy. One of the reasons why the FARC got legitimacy was because they wore uniforms. So when the shooting started, the army shot at the uniformed guerrillas and not at
Mm.
the peasants that dressed like the Sendero just dressed like peasants. So like you could be like, well, that guy looks like one of them. You know what I'm saying? And I think that those things do go a long way. So we'll see what happens. Uh, Again, I'm not as familiar, but I'm very hopeful. I mean, we see. Let's also we should look at Ecuador. There's a lot of changes going on in
Yes.
Ecuador. The banker president Guillermo Lasso, he resigned in order to call for new elections. Uh, we'll see. Well, not a full resignation, but rather he's going to stay on, I believe, as the electoral process goes forward.
Yeah. Um, I definitely think there is hope. I agree with you.
Mhm.
I was just so shocked when I heard about that, and I was like, "Oh my god, no, no, no!"
Yeah,
not Colombia. They just got a breather. Last thing they need is these right wingers to come back and try to. That dude Dunque, if I'm saying his name correctly, he
yeah,
was a butcher. Like, he
yeah,
should be under the damn jail cell. Him and Bolsonaro, they need to be under the damn jail cell for what
yeah,
they have done to their countries. Like,
yeah,
it's just, it pains me to see that people are still holding on to these ideas over there that, and they saw what happened, but because they're getting their pockets lined, they just want to stay with that part. Like,
With Colombia is very complicated because narco trafficking involves so much of the society, so many
right,
people that there's it's almost an admission of guilt to vote
right.
for Petro. So it
Hmm.
almost takes a mature voter to be like, damn, bro, let me vote for change. This shit is too crazy. I think that should be noted, right? It's very
Right.
hard for a Colombian, not every Colombian, right, but for a lot of Colombians to
Hmm.
outright condemn narco trafficking, because outright condemning narco trafficking means outright condemning their brother, their cousin, their neighbor, their teacher. People remember that like pregnant women were working as mules bringing drugs to Miami.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so, like, damn, you're like, fuck, like, if you were a pregnant woman in the late 80s, let's say you were a 20 something, today you're what, you're in your 50s, right? You're still a voter, but now you're like, damn, I'm really gonna vote against what I did, against what I was part of, even if I was
Mm.
forced by circumstance. So I think with Colombia, there is that deeper maturity that's needed, and maybe that's part of what's going to help Colombia. Whereas in Peru, not every Peruvian was a Fujimorista, or not, like most Peruvians were not Fujimoristas, so they were not like, oh shit, I'm in the shit, I'm part of this, mafia
Right.
and so on.
Right.
Mhm.
I never looked at it from that perspective. That's a good point. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm always able to look at my Western bias, my Western American bias, and see that I don't fully get it. And that's why I asked out of sincerity. Like, I don't fully understand that, what a mother had to go through just to provide for her family. She
Mhm.
had to be a mule, and it's like I couldn't relate to that. So I'm glad that I'm learning on that impact of it, because I'm just sitting here like, I'm like, you guys want the right wing back? Like, really? Like, like that
Yeah,
dude was an asshole.
yeah.
but
Because
but thank
it's an
you.
indictment on so much more than just Duque. That's the thing. You're voting against more than Duque.
Right, right. Well, let me let you go, Diddy, so you can get back to the great work that you do for the working class people here and abroad.
Certainly.
Um, Again, I am so humbled to have you to take the time out and
Yeah.
come on the show, man. You are definitely a friend of the show, and I definitely looking forward to have you back on. And for everyone that's listening, like, share, comment, check out the Troca Collective, see what work that they're doing out there. Go be a part of a grassroots movement. People, get involved.
That's right.
If you got mental health issues and stuff, we're going through some stuff. I understand that, but if you have the capacity, get involved. I want to thank
There's
you so much for coming on. What?
Definitely. No, I will have to plug in this campaign real briefly because tomorrow I'm
Yeah,
going to
go
be in
ahead, brother.
Tampa at an emergency conference in solidarity with the Tampa Five. These are
Hmm.
comrades from FRSO, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. They are
Okay.
being right now persecuted by Ron DeSantis, fascistic
Oh
state
God.
apparatus. They want to send them to jail for about more than 10 years. So we're mobilizing in solidarity with these comrades. And again, I invite you to look it up. If you're in Florida, get involved. Tampa 5. You can find their information on the FRSO social media for sure.
Send me that link and I'll put it right in the description when I release the
I'll
final
send it
cut
to
of
you right
this.
now. Dale.
Okay. All right. See you later, brother.
Sí, hasta la victoria
Have a good
siempre.
day.
Hasta
Yeah.
luego.
I need to learn freaking Spanish.
You just gotta say venceremos. And that's it.
Vacilaremos.
Dale.
Have a good one, brother.
You too.